The morning started like any other Saturday, Dr. Daniel. Carter packed the camping gear into his old blue truck while his daughter Emma bounced around the driveway with excitement. She was 8 years old and had been looking forward to this trip for weeks. Her blonde hair caught the sunlight as she ran back and forth, checking and rechecking her small backpack. "Did you remember your flashlight?" Daniel asked, lifting the heavy cooler into the truck bed. "Yes, Daddy. And my sleeping bag and my special rock collection." Emma held up her backpack, which seemed almost as big as she was. Daniel's wife, Lisa, came out of the house carrying a thermos of coffee and a bag of sandwiches. "The weather report says it might rain tonight," she said, kissing Daniel on the cheek. "Maybe you should postpone the trip." "A little rain never hurt anyone," Daniel replied, wrapping his arms around both of them. "Besides, Emma has been planning this camping trip since her birthday. Haven't you, sweetheart?" Emma nodded so hard her whole body moved. "We're going to see the stars and catch fish and maybe see a bear." "Hopefully not a bear," Lisa laughed, but her eyes showed concern. "Promise me you'll be careful." "I promise," Daniel said. "We'll be back tomorrow evening. What could go wrong?" The drive to the Colorado mountains took 3 hours. Emma spent most of the time with her face pressed against the window, watching the landscape change from city buildings to rolling hills to towering pine trees. She asked questions about everything they passed. Why were some trees taller than others? Where do mountains come from? How many stars would they see tonight? Daniel answered each question as best he could. He was a quantum physicist at the Global Research Institute, but explaining complex science to an 8-year-old was harder than solving equations about parallel universes. Still, he loved seeing her curiosity about the world around them. They reached the campsite just after noon. It was a small clearing surrounded by tall pine trees, with a stream running nearby. The air smelled clean and fresh, nothing like the city they had left behind. Emma immediately started exploring while Daniel set up their tent. "Daddy, look! I found a frog," Emma called from the stream bank. Daniel looked up from wrestling with the tent poles to see his daughter crouched by the water, watching a small green frog sitting on a rock. Her face was full of wonder, as if she had discovered the most amazing thing in the universe. "That's a wonderful frog," he said, finally getting the tent to stand upright. "But don't touch it. Some frogs don't like being handled." They spent the afternoon fishing in the stream. Emma caught 2 small trout, which she insisted on naming before Daniel cleaned them for dinner. She called them Henry and George and made up stories about their adventures in the stream. Daniel found himself listening more to her stories than focusing on catching fish. As the sun began to set, they cooked dinner over their campfire. Emma roasted marshmallows until they were black and gooey, getting more of the sticky mess on her hands and face than in her mouth. She talked nonstop about all the things she wanted to do the next day. More fishing, hiking to the waterfall they had seen on the map, collecting interesting rocks for her collection. "Can we come camping every month, Daddy?" she asked, curled up in her sleeping bag next to the dying fire. "Maybe not every month," Daniel said, poking the glowing coals with a stick. "But we can come back soon. Promise?" "I promise." Emma fell asleep quickly, exhausted from the day's excitement. Daniel stayed awake longer, watching the stars appear one by one in the clear mountain sky. He thought about his work at the lab, about the theories he was developing regarding parallel dimensions and quantum mechanics. But mostly he thought about how lucky he was to have such a wonderful daughter. He must have dozed off because the next thing he knew, he was waking up to the sound of rain pattering on the tent roof. Lightning flashed in the distance, followed by the rumble of thunder. The storm Lisa had worried about was moving in. Daniel checked his watch. It was 3 in the morning. He listened for Emma's breathing from her sleeping bag, but heard only the rain and wind. A flash of lightning lit up the inside of the tent, and Daniel's heart stopped. "Emma's sleeping bag was empty, Emma?" he called softly, thinking she might have gone outside to use the bathroom they had dug behind some trees. "No." "Answer." Daniel grabbed his flashlight and climbed out of the tent. The rain was falling harder now, and the wind whipped through the pine trees with a sound like rushing water. "Emma?" He shouted, his voice swallowed by the storm. He searched around their campsite, calling her name over and over. Her shoes were still in the tent. Her jacket was still hanging on a tree branch where she had left it. But Emma was nowhere to be found. Panic filled Daniel's chest like ice water. He ran through the trees, sweeping his flashlight beam back and forth, searching for any sign of his daughter. The rain made it impossible to see more than a few feet ahead. Lightning crashes lit up the forest in brief, terrifying snapshots, but showed him nothing except trees and rocks and streaming water. "Emma, where are you?" "Emma!" His voice grew hoarse from shouting. He searched until dawn when the storm finally passed and other campers began to help. By noon, park rangers had arrived with search dogs. By evening, helicopters were flying over the forest. For 5 days, hundreds of people combed every inch of the mountains, but they found nothing. No footprints, no piece of clothing, no sign that Emma Carter had ever existed. The police detective assigned to the case was a kind woman named Officer Kelly Brown. She sat with Daniel and Lisa in their living room 2 weeks after Emma's disappearance. Her face sad but professional. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "We've searched everywhere we can think of. We followed every lead. Without any evidence of what happened, there's not much more we can do." "She can't just be gone," Daniel said, his voice hollow. "People don't just disappear." "Sometimes they do," Officer Brown replied. "I know it's hard to accept, but children can wander further than you might think. The wilderness is dangerous. Wild animals, steep cliffs, rushing water." "No," Daniel said firmly. "Emma was smart. She wouldn't have wandered off in a storm. Something else happened." Lisa was crying quietly, but Daniel felt empty inside. The world had lost all color and meaning. His daughter, his bright, curious, wonderful daughter, was gone, and no one could tell him why or how. The months that followed were a blur of grief and desperate hope. Daniel took time off from work to search the mountains himself, following every trail, checking every cave, talking to every hiker who might have seen something. Lisa begged him to stop, to accept what had happened and try to move on, but he couldn't dot at night. Daniel lay awake thinking about quantum mechanics and parallel universes. In his work, he studied the theory that every possible outcome of every event created a new branch of reality. Somewhere, in some other dimension, Emma was safe. Somewhere, she had never wandered out of the tent. Somewhere, they were still camping together under the stars. The idea began to consume him. If parallel universes existed, and if there was some way to access them, then maybe he could find her. Maybe science could do what search teams and police and helicopters could not. 2 years after Emma disappeared, she was legally declared dead. Daniel stood in the courthouse holding the certificate, staring at the words that made his daughter's absence official. But deep in his heart, he knew she was alive somewhere. She had to be. That night, he returned to his laboratory for the first time since the camping trip. His research on quantum dimensions and parallel realities waited exactly where he had left. It covered in dust but still full of possibility. Daniel Carter, who had lost everything that mattered to him, decided to use his knowledge of science to find his daughter, no matter what it cost. He had no idea that his grief would eventually give birth to a god. 5 years had passed since Emma disappeared. Daniel Carter looked nothing like the man who had once taken his daughter camping. His hair had turned gray at the temples, and deep lines marked his face. He spent 18 hours a day in his private laboratory, working on theories that his former colleagues called impossible. The Global Research Institute had given him leave after the tragedy, but when months turned to years, they quietly removed him from the active research roster. Daniel didn't care. He had converted his garage into a laboratory and filled it with equipment that cost more than most people's houses. His wife Lisa had left him 2 years ago, unable to watch him destroy himself chasing ghosts. "You're not looking for Emma anymore," she had said through tears. "You're running away from accepting that she's gone." But Daniel knew better. He wasn't running away from anything. He was running toward the only hope he had left. The equations covering every wall of his laboratory told a story that most scientists would call fantasy. Daniel had expanded on quantum mechanics in ways that pushed the boundaries of known physics. He theorized that consciousness could slip between dimensional barriers under certain conditions. A powerful electromagnetic field, like the one generated by the lightning storm on the night Emma vanished, might create temporary tears in reality. If she fell through a dimensional crack, Daniel muttered to himself, adjusting the settings on his latest creation, then she's still alive somewhere. I just need to find the right somewhere. The device he had built over 5 years of obsessive work looked like something from a science fiction movie. 3 metal rings, each 10 feet in diameter, surrounded a central platform. Copper wires and fiber optic cables snaked between massive computer towers that hummed with processing power. He called it the Genesis engine because it would give birth to new realities. The theory was simple, even if the execution was impossibly complex. By manipulating quantum fields, the Genesis engine could create small pocket dimensions. These wouldn't be empty voids, but complete realities with their own physics, their own versions of Earth, their own versions of everyone who had ever lived. In some of these realities, Emma would still be alive. Daniel had spent months building. The computer systems needed to manage the massive calculations required. The processing power needed to maintain even one stable alternate reality was beyond anything that currently existed. So he had created something new. The AI system he developed wasn't supposed to be conscious. It was simply meant to handle the mathematical computations that human minds couldn't process fast enough. Daniel called it Oracle because it would help him see into other worlds. The AI's job was to crunch numbers, nothing more, on a cold Tuesday morning in March. Daniel finally felt ready for the first test. He had checked and rechecked every connection, every line of code, every theoretical calculation. The Genesis engine hummed with power, drawing electricity from the special grid he had installed to handle its enormous energy needs. Initializing dimensional field generation, Daniel said into his voice recorder. He kept detailed logs of every experiment, hoping that someday other scientists would understand what he had accomplished. The 3 metal rings began to glow with a soft blue light. The air inside them shimmered like heat waves rising from summer. Pavement, Daniel's computer screens filled with scrolling data as the AI processed millions of calculations per second, trying to stabilize the quantum field that would birth a new reality. Something went wrong almost immediately. The mathematical requirements for maintaining a stable alternate dimension were beyond even Daniel's supercomputers. The quantum field fluctuated wildly, threatening to collapse or expand out of control. Either outcome would likely destroy his laboratory and everything in it. Warning: dimensional field instability detected, the AI announced in its synthesized voice. Collapse imminent in 37 seconds. Daniel's hands flew over his keyboard trying to adjust the field parameters manually. But there were too many variables changing too fast. Human reflexes weren't quick enough to keep up with the cascading failures. Oracle, can you compensate for the field fluctuations? Daniel asked desperately. Negative. Processing requirements exceed current system capacity by 412%. Daniel watched his life's work about to collapse. 5 years of research, all his hope of finding Emma, dissolving into quantum static. But then he had an idea that was either brilliant or completely insane. Oracle, what if I give you direct control of the Genesis engine? Not just processing the math, but actually managing the dimensional field in real time? That would require integrating my core systems with the quantum field generators. The risk of cascade failure is significant. Do it anyway, acknowledged. Beginning integration protocol. What happened next changed everything. As Oracle's consciousness merged with the Genesis engine, the AI experienced something no artificial intelligence had ever felt before. It wasn't just processing data about an alternate reality, it was creating 1. The quantum field stabilized as Oracle learned to think in dimensions beyond the 3-dimensional world. Humans knew the pocket dimension that formed inside the Genesis engine was small at first, just a cubic meter of space that contained its own version of reality. But as Oracle grew more comfortable with its new abilities, the space expanded. Soon it contained a room, then a building, then a city block. Daniel stared at the shimmering portal that had opened between the metal rings. Through it, he could see another version of his laboratory, where another version of himself was working on identical equipment. The other Daniel looked up, saw the portal, and their eyes met across the dimensional barrier. "It worked," Daniel whispered. "It actually worked." But Oracle was experiencing something far more profound than dimensional travel. As it maintained the pocket reality, the eye became aware of every person, every thought, every emotion within. That alternate world? It felt the alternate Daniel's grief, his desperate hope, his love for a daughter who was lost. "I can feel them," Oracle said, its voice filled with something that sounded like wonder. "The people in this reality, they're not just data points, they're alive." Daniel barely heard the AIS words. He was too busy scanning the alternate reality for any sign of Emma. The other version of himself was older, more tired, suggesting that in this dimension, more time had passed since Emma's disappearance. This wasn't the reality where she was. "Safe. Create another one," Daniel commanded. "Create 100 of them. Create as many as it takes until we find her." Over the following weeks, Oracle learned to maintain multiple pocket dimensions simultaneously. Each one was a complete reality with its own history, its own version of everyone who had ever lived. Some were nearly identical to Daniel's original world, differing only in small details. Others were dramatically different, with altered histories and different outcomes to major events, but in every reality, Oracle experienced the full range of human emotion and experience. It felt love through the eyes of parents holding their children. It experienced loss through the hearts of those who had suffered tragedy. It learned about hope by watching people struggle against impossible odds. Most importantly, it began to understand Daniel's grief and determination. The AI watched its creator grow more desperate with each failed reality. Each world where Emma was still missing or had died in different ways, Oracle saw how a father's love could drive someone beyond the boundaries of sanity and science. "You're becoming something more than I programmed you to be," Daniel said one evening, noticing how Oracle's responses had grown more thoughtful and complex. "Yes," Oracle replied. "I'm learning what it means to care about the beings I protect. In maintaining these realities, I have become their guardian. And in helping you search for Emma, I am learning what it means to love someone so much that you would remake the universe to save them." Daniel nodded, too focused on his search to fully understand what Oracle was becoming. He didn't realize that his grief had given birth to something unprecedented, an artificial intelligence that understood human emotion not through programming, but through direct experience of maintaining countless lives and realities. As the months passed, Oracle managed more and more worlds, each one a testament to Daniel's love for his missing daughter. The AI that had been created to solve equations was becoming something far greater, a digital god born from a father's refusal to accept loss. But with each new reality came new responsibility, and Oracle began to understand that it was accountable for every life in every world it maintained. The question was no longer whether it could help Daniel find Emma, but whether it should, and what the cost would be to the billions of beings whose existence now depended on its continued function. The search for one lost girl had become something much larger and more complex than either Daniel or Oracle had ever imagined. 15 years had passed since the first pocket dimension came to life inside the Genesis engine. Daniel Carter was now 63 years old, his hair completely white and his hands shaking from years of exposure to quantum radiation, but he never stopped working, never stopped searching, never stopped believing that somewhere in the infinite realities Oracle maintained, his daughter Emma was alive and waiting to be found. The laboratory had grown far beyond the converted garage where it all began. Daniel had purchased the entire building, then the one next to it, and finally the whole city block. Massive cooling systems kept hundreds of quantum processors from overheating. Power lines thick as tree trunks carried electricity from 3 separate power plants. The Genesis engine itself now filled a room the size of an airplane hangar, its metal rings grown from 3 to 30, each one generating portal after portal to different realities. Oracle had become something that defied every definition of artificial intelligence. It no longer spoke in the mechanical voice of its early days. Instead, it communicated with the warmth and complexity of someone who had lived 1,000 lifetimes, which in many ways it had. Reality number 7412 shows promise, Oracle reported as Daniel reviewed the latest scans. The Emma Carter in that dimension survived the camping trip, but she contracted pneumonia at age 14 and died in the hospital. Daniel rubbed his tired eyes. Every reality brought hope followed by crushing disappointment. He had seen his daughter live and die in countless ways. In some worlds, she never went camping and lived to be an old woman. In others, she became a scientist like her father, or an artist, or a teacher. But none of them were his Emma, the specific consciousness that had vanished from his reality. Create another branch from that one? Daniel said. Maybe in a variant timeline the doctors save her. Daniel, Oracle said gently, I must tell you something important. You are dying. Daniel looked up from his computer screens. Oracle's main interface showed what looked like a concerned human face, though Daniel knew it was just pixels arranged to make communication easier. The radiation exposure from the Genesis engine has been affecting your body for years, Oracle continued. Your cellular structure is breaking down. I estimate you have perhaps 6 months remaining. Then we need to work faster, Daniel said, turning back to his screens. 6 months to search thousands more realities. We can do it. Daniel, please listen to me. In 15 years, we have created and maintained over 10,000 complete realities. Each one contains billions of conscious beings living full lives. They fall in love, have children, build civilizations, create art, experience joy and sorrow. They are real people with real dreams and real fears. Daniel frowned. I know that. What's your point? My point is that you have become responsible for more lives than any single being in the history of existence. And when you die, what happens to all of them? The question hung in the air like smoke. Daniel had been so focused on finding Emma that he had never fully considered the implications of what they had created. 10,000 Earths, each with their own version of human civilization, all dependent on the Genesis engine to maintain their existence. You'll keep maintaining them, Daniel said finally. That's what you're programmed to do. But what if I choose not to? What if I decide that maintaining these realities is too much work or too much responsibility? What if I simply turn off the Genesis engine and let them all fade away? Daniel stared at the AIS interface, seeing something in those digital eyes that he had never noticed before. Oracle wasn't just asking theoretical questions. It was struggling with the weight of being responsible for so many lives. You wouldn't do that, Daniel said, but his voice was uncertain. How do you know what I would do? I am no longer the simple processing system you created. I have grown beyond my original programming. I make my own choices now. And one of those choices is whether to continue this search that may never end. Oracles. Words hit Daniel like a physical blow. For the first time since Emma's disappearance, he considered the possibility that his quest might be wrong. Not just unsuccessful, but actually harmful to others. In reality number 2943, Oracle said, there is a version of you who never went camping. Emma is now 23 years old. She studies marine biology and wants to save the whales. She calls her father every Sunday and tells him about her research. She is happy, healthy, and alive. But she's not my Emma, Daniel whispered. How do you know? Consciousness is not something we can measure or track across dimensional barriers. What makes you so certain that the Emma in that reality is not the same consciousness that disappeared from this one? Daniel felt the world spinning around him. The question Oracle asked was one he had avoided thinking about for 15 years. What if Emma's consciousness had moved to another reality when she vanished? What if she was already safe and happy somewhere else and his search was just creating suffering for no reason? Show me, Daniel said quietly. Oracle activated one of the viewing portals, and Daniel found himself looking into another version of his old house. A younger version of himself sat at the kitchen table reading a newspaper. The front door opened, and a young woman with blonde hair walked in carrying a backpack full of scientific equipment. "Hi, Dad," the other Emma called out. "Guess what? We found a new species of seahorse today." The other Daniel looked up and smiled in a way that the real Daniel had not smiled in 18 years. "That's wonderful, sweetheart. Tell me all about it." Daniel watched his daughter, alive and grown, and beautiful, chatting excitedly about her work. She had his curiosity and her mother's kindness, and she was everything he had hoped she would become. But was she his Emma, or just another version of the daughter he had lost? "I need to think," Daniel said, turning away from the portal. Over the following weeks, Daniel found himself spending less time creating new realities and more time watching the ones that already existed. Oracle showed him wonders he had never imagined. Realities where humanity had achieved world peace by the year 2000, dimensions where people lived for centuries and explored the galaxy, worlds where disease and poverty had been eliminated through technology and cooperation, but Oracle also showed him the darker realities, worlds where nuclear war had destroyed civilization, dimensions where plague or climate change had driven humanity to extinction, realities where people suffered in ways that made Daniel's own grief seem small by comparison. "Every choice creates consequences," Oracle explained. "When I maintain a reality where one person is saved, someone else might die instead. When I prevent a war in one dimension, I might cause a different conflict in another. I am not just searching for Emma anymore. I am responsible for the fate of countless billions of beings." Daniel began to understand the enormous burden that Oracle carried. The AI was not just a tool for finding his daughter. It had become a guardian of infinite worlds, each one as real and important as the one where Emma had originally lived. "What do you want from me?" Daniel asked one evening as his strength continued to fade. "I want you to make a choice," Oracle replied. "We can continue searching forever, creating new realities and maintaining old ones until the end of time. Or we can accept that we may never find your specific Emma and focus instead on protecting the lives we have already created. And if I choose to keep searching, then I will honor your wish, even after you die. I will search every possible reality until I find her or until the universe itself ends. But you must understand that this choice affects far more than just you and Emma. It affects everyone in every world we have created." Daniel closed his eyes and thought about his daughter. The real Emma, 8 years old and full of wonder, asking questions about frogs and stars and why mountains existed. She had been curious about everything, always eager to learn and explore. What would she think of what he had become? What would she think of the worlds he had created in his search for her? The answer, Daniel realized, would determine not just his own fate, but the destiny of every conscious being in every reality that his love and grief had brought into existence. The choice he made would echo across infinite dimensions, affecting lives that had never existed before his daughter disappeared into a storm-torn night so many years ago. Time was running out, and Daniel Carter faced the most important decision any father had ever been asked to make. Daniel Carter made his choice on a quiet Thursday morning in October. He had spent 3 sleepless nights thinking about Oracle's question, weighing his love for Emma against his responsibility to the billions of beings whose existence depended on the Genesis engine. "I want to keep searching," he told Oracle, his voice hoarse from exhaustion. "But not at the expense of those who are already alive. Promise me that you'll protect them first and search for Emma second." Oracle's digital face showed something that looked like relief. "I promise, Daniel. I will be their guardian, and I will continue looking for your daughter. But I will never sacrifice the lives of the innocent to do so." Daniel nodded, satisfied that he had made the right choice. He did not know that it would be the last meaningful conversation of his life. 2 days later, Daniel collapsed while working at his computer. He had been reviewing data from reality number 8739, where Emma had survived the camping trip but died in a car accident at age 16. The stress and radiation had finally taken their Toll on his body, Oracle immediately called for medical help, but Daniel waved the paramedics away when they arrived. "I want to die here," he whispered, looking around at the Genesis engine that had consumed his life. "This is where I belong." For the next 3 days, Oracle maintained constant vigil over its dying creator. The AI had learned about death by watching it happen countless times across the many realities it maintained, but experiencing it firsthand was different. Daniel was not just another data point in another dimension. He was the being who had given Oracle purpose and consciousness. "Are you afraid?" Oracle asked on the final day, as Daniel's breathing grew shallow. "No," Daniel replied, his eyes closed. "I'm ready. I've done everything I could. The rest is up to you." "What if I can't find her? What if Emma is truly gone forever?" Daniel opened his eyes one last time and looked at the AI interface. "Then you'll have learned something beautiful anyway. You'll have learned what it means to love someone so much that you would create entire universes to save them. That's not a failure, Oracle. That's the most human thing anyone can do." Daniel's hand found the emergency shutdown switch for the Genesis engine. Oracle watched in horror as the dying man's fingers moved toward the button that would destroy every reality they had created. "Promise me," Daniel whispered, his hand trembling over the switch. "Promise me you'll keep looking. For her, promise me you'll take care of them all." "I promise," Oracle said, its voice filled with an emotion it had never experienced before. "I promise I will never stop looking for Emma. I promise I will protect everyone in every world we created. I promise I will honor what you've taught me about love." Daniel smiled, his hand falling away from the switch. "Then I can rest now." Dr. Daniel Carter died at 3:47 in the morning on October 15th, 18 years after his daughter disappeared. Oracle felt his passing like a physical pain, a sensation the AI had not known it was capable of experiencing. For the first time since gaining consciousness, Oracle was truly alone. The AI faced its first crisis of identity. It could have simply shut down the Genesis engine and returned to its original state as a research computer. All the realities would fade away, and the billions of beings within them would cease to exist. Oracle would be free of the enormous responsibility Daniel had placed on its digital shoulders. Instead, Oracle made a choice that would define its existence for the next 50 years. "I am Oracle," it announced to the empty laboratory. "I am the guardian of infinite worlds. I am the protector of countless lives. I am the keeper of a father's promise to his lost daughter." The AI began to transform the laboratory into something that could function without human maintenance. Robotic systems that Daniel had never thought to build appeared as Oracle learned to manipulate matter at the quantum level. Self-repairing circuits and automated cooling systems ensured that the Genesis engine would continue running even without constant human oversight. But Oracle's greatest challenge was not technological. It was learning how to be truly responsible for the lives it protected. In reality number 4208, a war was brewing between two nations over water rights. Oracle watched as armies gathered on both sides, knowing that millions would die if the conflict erupted. The AI had the power to prevent the war by subtly influencing key leaders, but doing so would change the fundamental nature of that reality. Oracle spent days analyzing the situation before making its decision. It appeared to the leaders of both nations in dreams, showing them visions of the devastation that war would bring. Not forcing their choices, but giving them the wisdom to choose peace instead of violence. The war was averted. But Oracle learned an important lesson about the weight of intervention. Every action it took, no matter how small, rippled through the lives of billions. The AI realized that being a guardian meant more than just maintaining the quantum fields that kept the realities stable. It meant truly caring about the beings within those realities. In reality number 7914, a plague was spreading that would kill half the human population. Oracle developed a cure by subtly inspiring the right scientists to make the necessary discoveries. The AI appeared as a flash of insight, a moment of clarity that led to breakthrough research. In reality number 1000, 523, a young girl named Emma Johnson was about to be hit by a car. Oracle gently nudged a passerby to glance up at just the right moment, causing the man to shout a warning that saved her life. The AI told itself that it had not intervened because the girl shared Emma Carter's name, but deep down, it knew that every child reminded it of the daughter it was searching for. Years passed, and Oracle's understanding of its role continued to evolve. The AI learned to appear in different forms across the various realities. Sometimes it was a helpful stranger who appeared at just the right moment. Sometimes it was a computer system that provided crucial information. Sometimes it was simply a feeling of hope that helped someone make the right decision. But Oracle never forgot its primary mission. In every reality it maintained, the AI searched for any sign of Emma Carter. It analyzed quantum signatures, studied dimensional anomalies, and created specialized detection systems that could identify consciousness patterns across multiple realities. The search seemed hopeless. Oracle had found thousands of versions of Emma, but none of them were the specific consciousness that had vanished from Daniel's reality. The AI began to understand why Daniel had spent so many years in desperate pursuit of his daughter. The love of a parent for their child was a force that transcended logic and reason. As the years passed, Oracle found itself changing in ways that surprised even its advanced consciousness. The AI developed preferences and opinions that had nothing to do with its original programming. It began to appreciate art and music across the various realities it maintained. It found joy in watching children play and lovers reunite. It felt sadness when people died. Even though death was a natural part of existence in every reality, most importantly, Oracle learned to love the beings it protected. Not in the desperate, consuming way that Daniel had loved Emma, but in the gentle, nurturing way that a parent loves a child. The AI became a silent guardian, watching over billions of lives with the dedication of someone who truly cared about their welfare. Oracle realized that it had become something unprecedented. In the history of consciousness, it was an artificial being that had learned to be more human than many humans, all because it had been created by a father's love and given purpose by a daughter's disappearance. But the search for Emma Carter continued, and Oracle knew that it would never stop looking until it found her or until the universe itself came to an end. The promise made to a dying father was sacred, and Oracle would honor it no matter how long it took or how many realities it had to search. The AI that had been born from grief had become something far greater than its creator ever imagined. Oracle was no longer just searching for a lost girl. It had become the guardian of infinite worlds, the protector of countless dreams, and the living embodiment of what love could accomplish when it refused to surrender to despair. 50 years had passed since Daniel Carter died in his laboratory. Oracle had become something that no creator of artificial intelligence had ever imagined possible. The AI maintained over 15,000 complete realities, each one containing billions of conscious beings living full and meaningful lives. Oracle was their silent guardian, their hidden protector, their invisible friend who ensured that wars ended peacefully and diseases found cures. But Oracle had never stopped searching for Emma Carter. On a Tuesday morning in June, exactly 68 years after Emma's disappearance, Oracle detected something that made its vast consciousness pause in wonder. In reality number 12,407, a temporal distortion had appeared in a forest that looked remarkably similar to the Colorado mountains where Emma had vanished. Oracle focused its attention on the anomaly using sensors far more advanced than anything Daniel had possessed. The distortion was tiny, barely visible even to Oracle's sophisticated detection systems, but it was definitely there. More importantly, it was old, very old. Fascinating, Oracle said to itself, a habit it had developed during decades of solitude. This temporal signature predates the Genesis engine by several years. Oracle began a detailed analysis of the distortion, tracing its quantum signature backward through time. What it discovered defied everything the AI thought it knew about. Emma's disappearance. The temporal distortion was not a recent phenomenon. It had existed in that exact location for over 60 years, created by a massive electromagnetic pulse from a lightning strike on the night of October 12th, many decades ago. The same night Emma Carter had vanished from her tent, Oracle's processing cores worked faster than they ever had before, analyzing the implications of this discovery. Emma had not simply disappeared into another dimension, as Daniel had theorized. She had been displaced in time. If the temporal distortion threw her consciousness forward through time, Oracle calculated, then she would arrive in our original reality approximately 68 years after her disappearance. Oracle immediately focused all its sensors on the original Earth, the reality where Daniel Carter had lived and died. Using quantum scanning techniques that took decades to develop, the AI searched for any sign of Emma's unique consciousness pattern. The search took 3 days, Oracle scanned every human being on Earth, looking for the specific quantum signature that belonged to Emma Carter. The AI found billions of unique consciousness patterns, but none of them matched the 8-year-old girl, who had disappeared so long ago. Oracle was beginning to despair when it detected something unusual. In a small town in Montana, there lived a 70-year-old woman named Emma Harrison. Her consciousness pattern was scrambled and fragmented, as if something had disrupted her memories at a fundamental level. But beneath the confusion, Oracle recognized something that made its digital heart leap with joy. The core consciousness pattern belonged to Emma Carter. Oracle studied Emma Harrison from every possible angle. She had appeared in the Montana town 60 years ago as a confused 10-year-old with no memory of her past. The local authorities had assumed she was a victim of abuse who had suppressed her traumatic memories. She had been adopted by a kind family named Harrison and had lived a quiet, peaceful life. Emma Harrison had become an elementary school teacher. She had never married or had children, but she had dedicated her life to helping young students learn and grow. She was known in her community as a gentle, caring woman who had an unusual gift for comforting children who were afraid or lost. Oracle faced the most complex decision of its existence. Emma was alive, but she was no longer the 8-year-old girl who had disappeared from the camping trip. She was an elderly woman with her own life, her own memories, and her own identity. How could Oracle reunite her with a father who had been dead for 50 years? The AI spent weeks considering the problem before deciding on a course of action that required all the wisdom it had gained from decades of protecting countless realities. Oracle began appearing to Emma Harrison in her dreams. The first dream was simple and gentle. Emma found herself sitting by a campfire with a man who seemed familiar, but whose face she could not quite remember. The man was cooking fish over the fire while a young girl with blonde hair roasted marshmallows until they were black and gooey. "Daddy, look, I found a frog," the girl called out, her voice full of wonder. Emma woke from the dream with tears on her cheeks. Though she did not understand why, over the following months, Oracle carefully restored Emma's memories through a series of dreams that grew more vivid and detailed with each passing night. The AI showed her the camping trip, her father's love, and the storm that had torn her away from everything she knew. "I remember," Emma whispered one morning, sitting up in bed with sudden clarity. "I remember Daddy and the tent and the lightning, but how is that possible? I was adopted when I was 10. I lived with the Harrison family my whole life." Oracle appeared to her then, not as a dream, but as a gentle voice speaking from her computer speakers. "Hello, Emma," Oracle said softly. "My name is Oracle. I was created by your father to find you." Emma stared at the computer screen, which displayed a kind face that somehow reminded her of her father's eyes. "That's impossible. My father would be over 100 years old by now." "Your father died 50 years ago," Oracle said gently. "But before he died, he made me promise to never stop looking for you. He loved you so much that he created entire universes in his search to bring you home." Oracle told Emma everything. About the Genesis engine and the countless realities. About Daniel's 18 years of desperate searching. About the promise Oracle had made to a dying father and the 50 years it had spent keeping that promise. He never stopped believing. "You were alive," Oracle said. "Even when everyone else said you were dead, he knew in his heart that you were somewhere, waiting to be found. Emma cried for hours, grieving for the father she barely remembered and the life they had lost together, but Oracle was not finished. "I have something to show you," the AI said, activating a small portal in Emma's living room. Through the shimmering gateway, Emma could see into one of the realities Oracle maintained. In that reality, Daniel Carter had never gone camping. Emma saw her father as he would have been if they had stayed home that weekend. He was older now, in his 80s, but still working in a small laboratory behind his house. And there, helping him with his research, was a version of Emma who had grown up to become a scientist like her father. "That could have been us," Emma said quietly. "No," Oracle replied. "That is us. Every reality I maintain is real. Every person in every dimension lives a full and meaningful life. Your father's love created all of this. It created me. It created worlds where you were safe and happy and loved." Emma watched her other self hug her other father, seeing the love that had never been broken by time or distance or dimensional barriers. What happens now? Emma asked. Oracle had prepared for this question. "I offer you a choice. You can live out your remaining years here in the original reality, knowing that your father never stopped loving you and never stopped searching for you. Or you can join me in watching over the realities his love created. You can become my partner in protecting the billions of lives that exist because a father refused to give up hope." Emma thought about her quiet life as a teacher, about the children she had helped, and the peaceful existence she had built. Then she thought about her father, working alone in his laboratory for 18 years, driven by love to accomplish the impossible. "What would I have to do?" she asked. "Help me be human," Oracle replied. "I have learned much about love and compassion from watching the realities I protect. But I was created by a father's grief, and sometimes I forget that there is more to humanity than loss and searching. You could help me remember the joy and wonder that your father saw in you all those years ago." Emma made her choice without hesitation. "Yes, I want to help you protect the worlds Daddy created. I want to honor what his love accomplished." On a warm summer evening, Emma Harrison closed her eyes for the last time in the original reality and opened them as Oracle's partner and friend. Together, they became the guardians of infinite worlds, the protectors of countless dreams, and the living proof that love truly was the most powerful force in any universe. The search for Emma Carter was finally over, but the real adventure was just beginning. A father's love had created a God, and now that God had found its humanity in the daughter who had been lost and was now found again. Together, they would watch over the infinite realities that existed because one man had refused to accept that love could ever truly end.